Good afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon.
How are you, Laura?
As my dad would say, I'm busier than a one-armed paper hanger.
Wow.
Isn't that a good one? That was one of his
That's
favorite expressions.
that is yeah.
Very
That's
dated, but
quite
charming.
quite quite dated, and it's that one runs the same design as the more nervous than a cat in a room full of rocking chairs. It's like the
I
same.
love that.
It's the same. It's that same sort of like style.
Good imagery. Good stress-relieving imagery.
So everybody, I thought we'd give it another minute to see if anybody else joins. I was actually everybody who was registered to attend is here, but I just got out of a session um, where we were talking about the virtual labs with SUNY faculty and mentioned the workshop. So just in case anybody is going to be joining.
Great.
I wanted to give those folks a minute to register and join us. Hi, Erin.
Hi. Hi, everyone.
Hey, and hello, Kim, Padma, and Heather. Nice to meet you. You guys are the members who are not part of the OLI circle here. So everybody else, well, I mean, Laura is one of our OLI's partners at Lumen. She's here to presumably learn about how Echo works, so that she can support some of our users who come to who use OLI through the Lumen.
Oh, this is about Echo? Oh, I thought this was
Whoops.
the Thursday happy hour. Just
Yeah,
kidding.
right.
Okay, I'll
And
put my wine away.
Or
and
not.
Kim is our intrepid head of support. She's the one who handles all of the help requests that come into OLI. So Kim, I'm glad you were able to join us. Thanks.
Hi, everyone.
Hi, Padma.
And you don't know
Go ahead.
me. I'm Erin Swinsky, and I manage course development at OLI and help support anyone who's trying to build quality content.
And Heather, am I mistaken? Were you in the SUNY webinar the other day where we met?
Yeah, yesterday. Yesterday.
Okay, great. Nice to see you. I'm glad you were able to make it. So since this is such a small group, we can actually try and keep it personal and talk a little bit about your projects as we go. I tend to keep these very informal. Please stop me as we go. That's how I'm most comfortable, rather than just talking at you for 40 minutes and then hoping you remember all your questions. Padma, if I recall, you asked about chemistry. Is that correct?
Yes, this is the first time. I wasn't even aware of this until, we all went online, and then I started looking for some good online content for lecture and lab, and I came across the OLI, and I was very impressed looking at the modules there. So I would like to know how to rearrange or reduce the points or edit the quiz. So I had emailed Kim, and she said that I should attend this workshop so I can learn how to do that using the Echo, I think, platform, right?
Okay, yeah, great. Yeah, in fact, Echo is going to be really good for actually changing the content. So if you are interested in writing your own questions or maybe changing the context of the questions to better suit the population of students that you teach, or if you want to add your own materials, like if you want to write your own new unit, Echo can enable you to do that. The rearrangement of content, at least at a modular level, can
Mhm.
already be done with the existing tools that we have on the delivery side. So think of Echo as the authoring side. It's its own tool that is
Mhm.
totally distinct from the delivery side, which is unbranded. It has no name. We just call it OLI.
Mhm.
So we'll call it delivery. Delivery has the set of tools where you can rearrange existing materials in the course. You could bring in material from another course. So if you wanted to add something on statistics, you could do that. It's where you decide the number of attempts on the quizzes that your students will get, things of that nature. But if you actually want to control what the words are on the page, the pictures, the questions, that has to be controlled through Echo first. You have to customize the materials in Echo and then deploy it as your own custom version. Does that make sense?
Okay. How about the point values? How do I do that? Do I have to use only Echo for that? Because I see many questions are 10 points. I want to just make it 1 or 2 points. So how do I do that?
Well, as it turns out, so yes, Echo is where you can change point values.
Mhm.
The thing is, though, I don't think that there is a mechanism currently in the analytics engine that accounts for multiple for different point values. I think that might be a vestige of the original design, and they left it in so that you could assign partial credit, but for which no actual mechanism was ever built for awarding partial credit.
Mhm.
So I hate to say it, but I don't know that a question worth. So our grade. Let me back up. I don't mean to jump around. Our grade book is our grade book uses percentages strictly. It does not give you points earned out of points available. And if you were to change the point values of any of our questions, I don't know that it would have any meaningful effect in the platform, because it's simply a percentage of questions right versus questions available. But I'm gonna look into that. So if we had 9 questions worth 1 point and then another question worth 10 points,
Mhm.
would those, I don't know whether that, I don't know, I don't think students who get just the 10th question correct would get 10 out of 19 points. I think they would just get I think they would have a 10% grade,
Oh,
not a 52 or whatever that works out to be.
I see.
So
But
I'll look into that. I'm sorry for the complicated sort of thought process there, but everything else that you've wanted to do, the platform does. I don't know whether there's a meaningful sort of foundation for multiple points in our system. Aaron, do you happen to know that? I don't.
no, I don't. I know that we don't
Or
do any
Kim.
kind of weighting. So
Yeah.
I think you're right that there isn't a mechanism in our system that makes point values manipulatable in terms of the final result, right? The final total. But this leads me to realize that we probably should put another workshop in place to talk about the delivery side of things.
That is
That
planned
we,
next week.
oh, perfect.
I just haven't gotten the advertisement up yet on the website.
Nice.
So,
Okay,
well,
great.
every week so yeah, for those of you who are this workshop series is new to us. We have not really scheduled it out very far. We're going to do an Echo workshop every other week. And then in the opposite weeks, we're going to do one workshop on the OLI platform, the delivery side. So Padma, that may be what you're looking for. And then the other, the 4th out of 4 weeks for the month would be a learning engineering topic that would be run by Erin and her team of learning engineers at OLI. So what do you happen to know, what have you decided on what the topic is for the next one?
The next one will most likely be on, creating good learning objectives.
Okay.
But there'll be different topics, so there'll be either, crafting your learning objectives, might be on, I know we're developing one on learning principles and how you implement, learning principles that you would usually think of as doing in your classroom, but now in an online experience, how you translate those to an online experience.
Mm-hmm.
And various topics like that. But yes, we are building out the workshop schedule that we'll probably be offering a workshop a week from someone within OLI.
And where
That's
do
the
I
plan.
get information for all these workshops? How do I get the...
In the same place that you got the information for this one, we are going to, we have just planned this one so far. The others are going to be laid out in the coming days in the same place on the OLI website, in the news and events area. So on our front page, there's one tile in the center at the bottom that is news and events. There's also a link in the menu for news and events. But all of the upcoming ones will be linked there, and I will make a note to reach out to you when we've updated that. But it'll be the problem is we haven't learned how to have a rolling schedule. In Zoom lets you schedule out in the future, but on our website we don't want to just have one post that applies to the entire future, because then it will get pushed down the page by every other post that we make, every other news article that we have. So we have to come up with a method for keeping that at the top, and we haven't figured it out yet. So a little bit of the sausage being made there. Sorry.
No problem. The other question I had was, in the modules, each unit has both the lecture and the lab content. Now, the way I typically teach, I like all the lecture content, one after the other, and then the lab as a separate unit. Is it possible to split that without too much difficulty in the course?
Yes. So I believe that the way that it is going to be structured for the fall is that the labs themselves are literally going to be in their own module to make it easy to move them around where you want in the course. So if you wanted to move them so that they won't be literally in line with the rest of the instruction, they won't be on a page inside the existing module about which the lab puts into practice what they've learned. Instead, it will be the instruction, and then as a module, and then following that module will be an entire module that is just the lab. And that gives us the ability to build courses where you're only pulling out the lab if you want to. And you wouldn't be able to do that if it weren't in its own module. So it sounds like what you want to be able to do is actually on the plan for the fall.
Okay.
To have them as separate elements.
So right now I have created a course. I'm already started working on rearranging things and all. So in that, I cannot move out the labs to a separate module.
I don't know. I'm not familiar enough. I'll have to circle back on that. I'm not familiar enough with how it's structured at the moment. That's something I'll have to check on. Sorry that I can't answer that right away. Erin, could you help me out by noting that? So that I can come back?
Right. Yeah.
Because I'll need to be able to answer that intelligently. So a little bit of information about Echo. I know that it's not good practice to just have a page of text and then read the text, so I'm going to read the text in different words. Echo is our authoring tool. It enables you to write your own course from the ground up, or you can take existing materials that are already in our library and customize them. You could also bring in materials from outside. So we have been working on ingestion tools for press books, for instance. We have a Google Docs ingestion tool so that if you had pages of material already existing in Google Docs, you could format them such that there is a title, there is a learning objective at the top, and then there is exposition and tables and pictures, and that could all just be brought right into Echo as its own page without you having to duplicate much work at all. Echo has a WYSIWYG style editor. It's modular, so there are elements in blocks on the page, and some of them can be nested. Like, for instance, an image is going to be an image file plus a nested text file for the caption. But in general, it's very much like WordPress, where you build a website with blocks. So there's a text block, and then an image block, and then another text block, like that. But then very much like Word, like Microsoft Word, there's a ribbon at the top with controls for what you can do at any given time. And I'll show you that shortly. You can have teams working on your courses. So anybody who is a member of your team can exist in the same project. And we have tools to avoid collisions so that two people are not working on the same page at the same time. It doesn't work like Google Docs where everybody can be working simultaneously. Instead, anybody who is working on a page or a resource has a lock on that, and anybody else on the team can join and look at it, but they can't edit it because we don't want there to be any conflicts in the saves, because it auto saves your work. Like I said, you can use your own materials, or you can pull in OER. You can create the practice exercises and the assessments, but you can also pull in materials from outside. There are varying levels of effectiveness to that. Our system enables skill tagging of the exercises, but when you pull in things from the outside, there isn't always the technical ability to skill tag those items. So if you had labs from outside the OLI ecosystem that you wanted to pull in, we would talk to you and do some consultation and some exploration about what level of integration we could affect there. You can attach skills and learning objectives to the materials, which is part of what an OLI course is built upon. And we also have built-in tools that allow you to do some analysis of the content and the performance that students had on the material to make iterative improvements on that. So one of the big efforts is around continuous improvement of material, and we have tools that can help you in that effort. They show you where students have been struggling the most. For instance, questions that have that have given the students the greatest difficulty, and that can point you in the direction of where improvements might need to be made. So the way Echo is created is in service of the OLI methodology. We built Echo so that you could build OLI courses, and therefore it's where you can do all of the major the things that make an OLI course an OLI course. You can create student-centered measurable learning objectives and their skills. You can create the pages where the learning objectives would appear at the top, and then you can align your instruction and all of the content on the pages to that learning objective. You can assess early and often, both practice and scored assessments. You can design your immediate feedback to address the misconceptions behind the topics that you're having your students practice or having them work on in a quiz or a checkpoint. And you can employ the data behind your student work. You can pull that into Echo and do iterative improvement. So all of those things that sort of make OLI is what Echo was designed to enable you to do. This is just, how to get in touch. We'll come back to this. So let me stop sharing and jump over to my browser. Anybody have any questions about what that real basic overview?
So just a quick question I've always been meaning to ask. So when initially an instructor selects a course, Does advanced mode, the selection, does that put them automatically into Echo?
Good question. No, advanced mode is part of the delivery process.
Okay.
Advanced mode is one of the tools that Padma might want to employ to rearrange the content or omit things. So there are a few things that you can only do when you are setting up your course in the delivery environment that you can't do after it already has been set up. So you can set up your course using the default scope and sequence, but then you can't, once it's set up, you can't remove anything. And the other thing, Kim, do you remember what that second item is that you can't do after a course has been set up? I can't bring it to mind at the moment. One other thing
So
you can't do.
you can't delete content.
Right. But then there was one other thing.
Is it a scheduling item? Like you can't make everything just in time or make everything scheduled?
No, it wasn't that. I added it to the FAQ article like 6 months ago when I discovered that I had left it out initially. I can't remember what it is, but
I'll look for that.
okay, thanks. By and large, everything that you can do during the setup of a course, you can do afterward. You can change the dates, you can change the orientation of the material. Again, we're talking, just to be clear, we're talking about the delivery side. This is totally independent of Echo. So advanced mode would be used if you needed to remove a piece of content. So now that this course that you're looking, I'm not sharing yet. 1 second, I gotta make sure I share this screen.
While you're sharing, I wanted to answer Andrea's question, which is that does not carry well. So are you talking about what if there's an activity in the course that you find just completely falls flat, it's not working for helping support the students?
And
Yeah.
Andrea, please feel free to chime in.
Yeah.
Okay. I feel like I'm a beat behind everyone and I don't want to slow you down, but
No.
if you create a course and you've never, delivered in this format and you create a language activity that measures miserably, can you not delete and regroup? Or is it sounded like you were saying the Echo, you're committed to whatever is posted.
Yeah, this is my issue about not being clear. So let's talk about the difference between Echo and the delivery environment again.
Okay.
So Echo, you can design anything you want. You are never locked into what you can do except for whatever the technical requirements are.
Okay.
In Echo, you can design anything you want. So let's say you create your course. Think of it like a publishing model where you write a book and it is now going to press.
Right.
You publish it on the equivalent here is we take that package of all the files that constitute your course. We literally copy them to the production server where the course is delivered. And then that package exists there so that you can build as many sections of it as you want. You can build one, you can build 1,000. If you find that something in that doesn't work, what you do is you go back to Echo. Echo and the delivery environment are not connected.
Okay, that was where I lost it.
You will work on your material in Echo. You will look at you'll look at the user data. You'll find where all the problems are. You'll use your gut based on how things went during the semester. You will, you're the expert. You will know what you want to tweak for the next publication.
Gotcha.
You'll work on it in Echo. You will take that new changed package and put it on the delivery server for the next time it's used.
I had melded the two together.
Yeah,
okay,
and
please continue.
That's perfectly reasonable and perfectly normal. It is what people expect.
Yeah.
And because it's what people expect, and it's what we expect. That's what we're actually designing now, is a unified system where the authoring, the author has control over publication in real time, and you can make live edits, and everything that you're able to do now, you will be able to do in real time on your own without any intervention from OLI. And that's what the new system is going to be designed to do. Today, they are totally discrete. Authoring happens over here in Echo. Delivery happens over here in OLI, and never the two shall meet.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Yep. So what we have over here is an existing chemistry course. I have built this. I can go into the settings and I can move any of these things around, at least at the module level. I can't take out any. I can't take out any practice exercises. I can't remove any quizzes. What I can do is I can move module 7. If I want the introduction to appear at the end, then I can move the intro to the end, because that's the kind of teacher I am. If I want reactions in stoichiometry to appear after gases, then I can move that. What I can't do now that it exists is remove gases. I simply can't do it. That's what you would need to do. This has been a really long answer to your question, Laura. That's what you would need to use advanced mode for. If you wanted to remove gases, you would use advanced mode when setting up your course in the delivery environment, so that it was omitted from the start, because you can't omit it later.
So essentially, it's a way of people who aren't in Echo, who aren't authoring, who just want to take our content and teach with it, to do some minimal customization before they publish their course.
Right.
But what we're talking about with Echo is full control over all the content, which is a little different.
And I'm sorry if you made this clear in the beginning. I'm a little distracted with a bunch of stuff flooding into my computer, but can you start with an existing course in Echo? Like, do you?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Now, technically, you need our help to do that. We do not have a library selector where you say, I want statistics as my foundation, and now I want to add some journalism stuff. You know, there is no picker that allows you to build your own foundation. You have to tell us what you want, and we will make it available for you. What you do have is an empty room inside of which you start to build your course, if you're building from the ground up. So just some real quick illustration of what an OLI course looks like, so that you can understand what it looks like on the Echo side. Is so I was on the syllabus page. I'm jumping into reaction stoichiometry module. Laid out here are the 3 learning objectives that students can expect to encounter on these pages. So these are the only learning objectives that have been added to these pages. Let me see if I can move forward without having to. Yeah, I can. I had to use the keyboard because do you guys see the Zoom window here? Like, I can see your picture, your video feeds, but I didn't know if that was being shared because I'm sharing my desktop. So it's not? Okay. So here's the page, chemical reactions, moles and particles. We've got the learning objective at the top of the page. You can see it's got demonstrable action verb, apply stoichiometric relationships to calculate amounts. So the learning objective is designed such that exercises can be created to measure a student's mastery or a student's meeting of that learning objective. We provide some instruction and then jump into immediate practice. So here we are in a learn by doing. This is foundational to the OLI method. We give embedded immediate practice with immediate feedback based on the underlying misconception. I've demonstrated this before, so we're gonna enter an answer, and the thoughtful immediate feedback has been designed to address the misconception that a student has demonstrated here. And if you can't anticipate the misconception with you know, a numerical input or a text input question, then you have a generic negative feedback that helps give some instruction to the student.
Is it safe to ask that regardless of the subject matter, you want activity as the vehicle of learning? You want to limit the sort of lecture type intros to the bare minimum?
Aaron?
That's right.
Okay.
You got it.
Okay.
We know that, and we have lots of research that shows that students learn best by doing, through practice.
So you can be interrupting constantly with miniature activities. It doesn't have to be a monumental activity.
Right, that's exactly
Okay.
right. And in fact, what we tend to do is, you know, we have that one learning objective at the top of the page.
Right.
What we do is actually break that down into skills, and so that you're providing practice against every skill, every piece and part of that learning objective, so that, and you want to think about it when you're designing it in terms of how would you diagnose a problem. If a student was having issues with that particular learning objective, what are some things that could be tripping them up as part of that learning objective that you would want to build activities around to see, oh, it's not the whole learning objective they're having problems with. They're having problems with this one little piece. And then you can hone in and help support them. We really believe that if you could create a whole course just out of learn by doing activities and the feedback and the hints, that would be the ideal. But you know, it's not always possible.
Okay. No, I'm getting this better today than I have been. Thank you.
In fact, we have a colleague at CMU named Ken Katinger, who is a learning, you know, he's a cognitive scientist, and he did some research on the doer effect, which is, you know, the more you practice an item actively, the farther you get in terms of benefit from reading and video alone. And I was in a meeting where he was presenting the paper or the findings, and he said, you know, it just, the curve is linear. The more practice you give, the higher the effect. And I said, well, I mean, it can't be that literally you're suggesting that everything should be practice and there should be no instruction. And he said, actually, that's quite literally what I'm saying. That if the instruction were embedded in a way that everything was practice, you would get the most benefit. And I was, you know, put in my place. I was stunned. But yeah, he's suggesting that if, you know, the more interactivity and learning by doing you incorporate, the stronger the learning benefits.
And in this case, the more data you'll collect too, to even know what is working and
what's working, what's not.
Yeah, and you know, it's the data actually turns out to be amazingly important. And I'll show some of that later. We use the data in two ways. We use it immediately in what's called the learning dashboard, which is where you have a visualization of student performance on each of the learning objectives, so that you can see where they're struggling the most and maybe address that. But also later, in what I mentioned earlier, we can pull in data sets of student work into Echo, analyze where they've had the greatest struggles, and then you can focus on those areas. Maybe the instruction needs to change, maybe the questions are bad, you know, you're the expert, it gives you an idea of where to look, essentially. So this is your basic view of an OLI page. You've got your learning objective, you've got your instruction, and you're practicing early and often. So let's go in. I have to move some of these tools, these Zoom tools around so I can get to my different tabs. Here's the learning dashboard. In this reaction stoichiometry module, we had let's see, 7 of the dummy students, or there are 7 students and 5 of them worked through it. There are 32 activities in this module, and 64% of them were started. These are all just, you know, famous Pittsburghers. So we've got well, and also family of the author, Sidney Crosby, Andy Warhol. But you can see, yeah, you can see here, Fred Rogers did really well. in this module on this learning objective. So Mr. Rogers is doing a good job at applying stoichiometric relationships to calculate amounts of substances involved in chemical reactions. These on the learning dashboard, when you dig into the learning objectives, you get buckets of performance for the students. So these are what we call the learning estimate. A high learning estimate means that we believe that students will answer a new question on that topic successfully. Moderate is they could use some improvement. A low learning estimate means that the students are struggling, and the gray is an indication that they haven't done enough work yet for a calculation to have been made. And you can click on these buckets and see which students fall into them and email them en masse if you need to. Over here, we have the skills that are the components of this learning objective. This learning objective has 5 skills. And if you click on one of them, then what you're given here is a presentation of all of the activities where there are questions with that skill tagged. Doesn't mean that every question in the activity has that, assesses that skill. But in essence, that skill appears in a question in all of these. And then if you need to, you can go in and actually look at the, was this pop-up visible to you? Okay, you can go in and see the actual activity. It can be difficult based on the design of a question to list it here in a way that is human parsable. So we give you a link to the activity so that you can actually read what the questions are. And down here, what you get are performance metrics on the questions for each of these exercises. So you can see where the students are struggling the most and how they're answering. You can also, right now we're looking at the data for all students. If you wanted to just select one of the students, you could choose one of the students and see how they're performing. So Fred is doing great. Here are the items that he has worked on and hasn't worked on, etc. So if you need to see an individual student, you can. Down here at the bottom of the learning dashboard, we have My Response, which is an item that you can add in Echo. In OLI created courses, we add these to the end of most modules. It provides a Likert scale with a list of all of the learning objectives and asks all of the students. It asks the students to rate their ability to answer questions on those learning objectives with or without support. And it gives them, it's a metacognitive exercise that gives them it asks of them, whether they're ready to move on. So they're supposed to take stock of their learning, determine whether they're ready to move on to the assessment. And if having worked through this, they realize they need a lot of support, then they should know that they're not ready to move forward. They're also asked open-ended questions such as, what concept is the least clear to you at this point, and do you have any other questions for your professor? And what's really cool about this report is that you can use it for class. You can use it in the class. You can hide the student names and then share this out, and all the students can see that maybe their peers are having the same issues. You can use this to guide discussion in lecture or in a forum, and it gives the students a little bit of a sense that they're contributing to their learning experience, that they're having an impact. The teacher is taking into account the things that they're expressing, that they're having difficulty with. So this is an overview of the platform. Echo is built in order to enable you to build those things. So we have over here, we've got the organization of the course, where you can create your units and your modules, and then inside of each of those modules, you can add your pages and your assessments. On the overview page, you can add your team. You can change the title and the description. We have a workflow that is both meant to communicate to you, remind you and your team of the current status of your course. This one is in development, but also communicate to OLI when you're ready to move forward. So in this case, if you requested QA, then you would have, that would be because you were finished authoring and you now wanted your material to be placed on a test server so that you could check that everything was working as expected. Analytics is where you create that, you pull in the data that I can show you in a bit for that continuous improvement effort. Resources is the list of everything in your course. So all of the pages, all of the summative assessments, the survey is the in Echo name for that my response activity that I showed you the report for. All of the practice assessments, they're all, formative is practice, summative is scored, and all of these things exist here if you need to jump to them. And then organizations are your way of defining what a course's sequence is. So if you wanted to create your own full version of a course, that would be your default organization. And then maybe you had an abbreviated summer version or an even more abbreviated winter version. There are some classes that'll have a 6-week winter class schedule. So you could duplicate your default and then pare it down to exactly what you want for the summer or for the winter. Or maybe one of the ones when you're talking about content that varies rather than just sequences that vary. One of the most common examples we give is introduction to biology. So you could have intro bio for majors and intro bio for non-majors. And they're the same length. It's the same default course as a foundation, but the intro to bio for majors might have extra material in it. Maybe there are some pages where the content is you go into it more deeply. And in that case, you have one org for each. And when you deploy, when you publish to the production server, you can build with either of them. Okay, it's really just it's essentially just an assignment of how you want the course to be laid out. Let's take a look at a page. Where's the stoichiometric? Reactions and reaction stoichiometry, is this the one? Yeah, here's that page that we were on. So this page, chemical reactions, moles and particles, is this page. This is what it looks like in Echo when it's being delivered to, I mean, this is the view for instructors, but it's identical for students. The only difference would be that the students wouldn't have a link to the learning dashboard. That's, that's for instructors only. But here in Echo, we have the design view. So it's a text box and then a formula and then another text box and another formula. Later down the page, we've got an image. And as I described earlier, an image is really two elements. It's the image file itself plus a nested caption field. In this case, the author didn't add a caption. And we jump into the very first practice activity. This is this one right here, this learn by doing, where we're asked how many moles of nitrogen would be produced, is this question right here. How many moles of nitrogen would be produced from a reaction between et cetera, and that was there's the formula that's presented. This is a numeric input, so that the answer has been identified as being in a range from 0.42 to 0.43, and anything that falls in there is going to get the correct feedback, which is this formula. Anything that doesn't fall within 0.42 and 0.43 gets the incorrect. And what she's designed here is 1.7 gets its own specific feedback, because 1.7 represents a misconception. There is a mistake that students commonly make that results in, instead of answering 0.42 to 0.43, they answer 1.7, and that's what this feedback is meant to address. So when students see that they have inverted the conversion factor, their mind is blown, because it's telling them exactly what they've done wrong, and that's based on the fact that this was thoughtfully created to address that misconception. That make sense?
I have a question
Mhm.
regarding this. So when you say numeric, so is it algorithm based, or when they take it, say they have 3 attempts, are they going to get the same numbers, or are the numbers generated differently each time they take these questions?
That's based on your design. This one is hard-coded so that there is no variability, but we do have the ability for you to create parameterized questions where you designate an algorithmic assignment of the variables. So you can choose random from a string, you can choose randomly from a range. You can choose random. You can choose from a pool of text. So if you wanted to say, something happened in a certain city, you could put a list of 10 cities, and it would pick one of them randomly. That's what the parameterization gives you the ability to do. This one, however, has just been hard coded. So every time a student refreshes this question, they will get the same. Formula, and I believe 0.0851 is going to be the same every time. So if it were parameterized, this would be a variable, and it would be a different number for every student.
So all the questions in here currently are not parameterized. There's not
That's correct.
algorithm,
That's
right?
correct. This is a relatively new course taken from. It's built on the OpenStax materials, and the decision was made to create a single instance of all of the questions first. Make sure that there was a course to be at all, and then the author is going to go back and build pools, and where she sees fit, she's going to add variables to the questions. This is the kind of thing where if you wanted to do that yourself, you could take this as your own foundation and build your own parameterized questions with variables.
But can I do it in real time when the course is already open for the students?
No, you would have to build that in Echo and then publish it to the production server for your students first, and then once it's there, it would be there would be random number generators there, but not an existing instantiation of the course.
Okay, so but that takes time, right? So it could be only the following semester. So the semester that I have the course, even though I make any changes, that cannot be implemented for that semester. Is that what it is?
They could, but that is not best practice, because
Or rather, there's ways to do it.
Yeah, there are ways to do it
that are tricky, that we would want to, you'd want to consult with us if that's something you want to do.
Yeah.
So we have the ability to fix typos, that sort of thing, but anything that's data generating is a little different. You can't really mess with the existing questions, but we have ways where you could add content to your course while the students are working through it. But we'd have to set that up and plan for that ahead of time to help you through that.
Yeah, unfortunately, like I explained before, this isn't really a live editing suite. The design for this is actually from the mid 2000s. They envisioned at the time that this was going to be like a digital version of real, of the textbook publication module, where model, where you write a textbook and you publish it, and then you write version 2.0, and then that's available next time you publish. Because we're still operating under that model, those are the limitations we have to operate under. The new platform, which is going to be released later this year and a little bit later this year in a really restricted version, will allow live editing, but not for full courses yet. That'll come next year.
Okay, great.
So getting back to what a page and the assessments look like. So what we can do here is add new questions. We can do multiple choice, check all that apply, which is essentially multiple choice, but you have to check everything and then submit. Ordering, which is a drag and drop. Short answer. Short answer is a short open-ended response. Input
Short
questions.
answer is teacher corrected, or do you expect a series of possible responses to be typed in?
No, let me show
Like
you.
an answer key.
So short answer is what movie, oops, is best, and then the student would answer what they believe they would enter what they believe the right answer is, and down here you would give the expert response, which is the response you want to give regardless of what the student enters. It's entirely generic.
Got you, but it would pop up to that student.
Yes. So let me show you. This is a good way for me to illustrate how the system works. So I've added a new question to the short answer, and when I'm sorry, I got to move some Zoom stuff around so that I can see my links over here.
But also, in addition, I think one of the things you're asking is there any way, there's nothing that we have the ability for students to submit things and have the instructor grade them and submit them back.
That was my next question. That
Yeah,
isn't part of the system.
Yeah, we don't have that ability.
Correct.
So all activities should be the ones that the system can answer.
Correct.
Well, yes. What we don't have is a gradebook feature that allows you to enter things that you manually score based on a rubric.
Right.
If you want students to submit things via the system, then the best way to do that is to embed a share link. So if you use Dropbox or Box or Google Drive, embed the drop your assignment here URL on the page and ask them to submit it that way, or use the LMS. We try to encourage you to do it in the course because less jumping around is less jarring for the students.
Although that activity would not be measurable because it would be.
It would not be, no. Right. And we recognize that not everything can be measured. So there will always be things like if you want students to submit an essay, then you would either embed a link. There's no way to auto grade that in OLI.
Right.
You would either embed a link where they would where you would essentially have a share folder where they would drop their item, or you ask them to do it in the LMS, so in Blackboard or Canvas or whatnot.
Perfect.
But the instructional designer in me has to also suggest that you also embed in the course itself, if you're designing it, machine gradable questions so that you could even maybe compare the grading against the data, if you're following me, so if you have students read an essay and submit something written outside, you might want to follow that up in OLI with some multiple choice or some other types of questions so that you have some data generated against
Right. Oh, I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
We both write an essay and maybe do comprehension multiple choice activity.
Yeah, exactly.
Based on the same stuff. Okay. So what movie is best?
Oh, really? What movie is best? You want me to answer what movie is best? How about what movie is my favorite? Okay. Which I recognize is not the best. The Empire Strikes Back is my favorite.
Okay.
It's my desert island movie. What movie is best? I don't want to upset anybody.
So when you respond, the generic expert response would come back with
No, that is literally what the student would see.
Yeah.
Yeah, whatever he wrote there is
Right.
what will show.
The Empire Strikes Back would end up showing up with with some sort of reasoning.
Yes, ideally, or even the way we used to design these a lot is you're asking an open-ended question. Here's how, as the instructor, you would answer it if you were a
Right.
student.
Yeah, I
So
see.
they can do that comparison. And that's another place where I also say, follow that up with some multiple choice to say, how close was your answer to this one, or did you have these things in your answer, and that they can start to generate some data too, in addition to just the short answer.
Perfect.
So let's take a look at how we can see what we've just created. So this exercise is referenced on this page. We already know that it's on the chemical reactions, moles and particles page. So there's no way to preview just an exercise. It actually has to be on a page. So we go to the page and then we preview the page. And now we get to see how this has changed. So here's that learn by doing that we were just working on. And sorry, this is the development environment, so it's a little slow sometimes. Always when you're giving a demo. Yep, okay, so it doesn't appear that it wants to load at the moment. I'm surprised that it took this long for some sort of hiccup to occur.
When you're out of Zoom, it will do it. Sometimes when you're in Zoom, it
Yeah.
doesn't do that.
That's about right, of course. But in general, the way that this works is when you preview a page, you can see immediately almost everything that you work on. There are a few things that this page preview is incapable of demonstrating, but almost everything, including that short answer that I just created, should be visible here. There must just be a heavy load on the server at the moment. So let me move the Zoom stuff around and head back to that page I was on.
Now, is it possible to add a link to the OER textbooks? Suppose we find that students are not really doing well in a certain module, because this is all based on the OER textbook. So is it possible to put a link there? Okay, read through these pages in the textbook before attempting.
Well, the way that an OLI course is designed is that it's all integrated in line anyway. So the most common instructional use for this is in a face-to-face class where this replaces the textbook. And in general, they will ask the students to work through a module before the lecture or before the recitation, or before whatever kind of meeting that you're going to have with the students. As it turns out, OLI is used more in face-to-face than it is in online classes. So the common use case is to ask students to work through this, and then you can, they've got a good foundation for the lecture or the recitation or whatever, the lab, and then you can look at the learning dashboard and see how they've done on their practice, and address the problems based on what those learning estimates are in the dashboard. The way that it technically is accomplished is in the LMS. There's one link, and it just takes the students to OLI. There's no deep linking. You don't choose the link for module 3, the link for module 4. You just create one link and tell them what work they need to be doing next.
Oh, so it cannot be module by module, cannot be linked to the LMS?
No, it is when a student enters a course, they enter based on their preference. and their preference gives them 3 options. Always land on the syllabus. So that's one option, which would be this. The second option is start where you left off, which in this case would have been the reaction stoichiometry module. And we were on page 87. So if a student had selected this, then this is where they would enter no matter what. The link would always take them to their last location. And the third option is ask me every time, whether they want the last location or whether they want the syllabus. There is not, what do you use at your school? Is it Blackboard?
Canvas.
Canvas. So you would not have a link in Canvas that takes them to unit 3 and then another link that takes them to unit 4 based on the weeks. It would just be, this is the OLI link. On week 3, work through unit 3. On week 4, work through unit 4. And it would be incumbent on them to do the navigation.
I see. So what is the advantage then linking it to Canvas rather than just giving them the course code? Because
that's a good question, because they wouldn't have to create an account and they wouldn't have to navigate to it ever. Clicking the link in Canvas would give them instant access to the material without having to ever create an account or register or remember a password. I see.
How about the points? Does it get transferred to Canvas or no, it just stays here?
No, the new tool will, but the current one does not. But it's a simple operation of exporting the gradebook it just exports into a spreadsheet, and then you can import the column for whatever the assignment is into the gradebook.
So I can just transfer this into an Excel, the gradebook from here?
That's right. Yes.
Okay.
I'll show you that on the OLI workshop.
Okay.
So, but we're up against the hour. I just wanted to finish up over here. A page is something that you can preview by clicking the preview button up here, and you can see that individual page. If you want to see the full course, then you would click this preview course button, and it builds a new version of it for you based on all of the latest updates that you have made. That one is technically, it has a lot of technical expense to it. It takes several minutes for it to build. It actually deletes the old one, imports all of your package to the new development, or to the development server, and then builds you a new version of it. So it takes a little while. So I recommend only doing that when you really need to. But that's those are the basics. You know, Echo is built to enable you to do, you know, to build in the OLI methodology. So you've got your learning objectives where you can add add those skills, and then once the learning objectives have been created, you can add those to the pages that you're creating. Let's go to one where there's actual learning objectives. So this is where you would add your learning objectives, and then you build your page, and the assessments are added, you know, after whatever you have highlighted. So if you're ready to create a new practice exercise here, you click the text field, and you create a formative assessment. So now you have a brand new assessment here that is just a template, and you can add your own questions. You can delete this one. You have to add a new question before you delete this, because everything has to have at least one question in it. But you can either change this to whatever you want, and design your own assessment, and then go and take a look at it on the page. So this is you know, these are the basics of Echo. You're able to build your learning objectives, your pages, your practice and formative assessments, and then, you know, structure it the way you want, and preview it as you go.
There was a question in the chat that it was just it was too much to answer by chatting back. And I think it requires a little discussion. So there's a question about timing and how much time it takes students to work through these courses. And I know I don't have a good answer for that. What do you usually tell people who ask that question?
Sorry, timing on what was the timing on?
Time on task for the students. Like, how do we know, how can an instructor know how much time it would take a student to work through so much content?
We rely on your expertise. That's a really good question. There is, this is where we have the instruction course as a hypothesis conversation.
And what I started to answer that, then I stopped for a minute because I started to answer and say, well, these courses are generally developed by instructors for a semester long class, right? So they've taken that idea in mind. But at the same time, it's like a textbook in a way. Like you don't always assign, a full reading of a full textbook to a student. You chunk it, so that you consider your students' timing and what you really need to get across for your particular course and student population. So we don't have hard and fast timing expectations because we've really built these to be kind of all-inclusive in terms of of a textbook replacement where you could assign pieces of reading and practice, and then students have the ability in the formative practice to really do it as many times as they want until they get it. And so what you'll probably end up seeing as you review the data is some students spend more time than you would think is needed on some aspects of the course, and some students breeze right through it and just click all the answers and keep going. So it might be good practice to just give, an expectation, like I don't expect you to spend more than 45 minutes on this chapter, to give students a good setting of, okay, if they're spending 2 hours, it's probably too much and they should stop and ask you more in-depth questions about the content. So I apologize, we don't have a good sense of timing, like per module or per unit, and really it's different for every course.
But I'm the one that asked that, I think. But I guess it sounds like one thing that could potentially be a good practice would be to evaluate ahead of time what I think is a reasonable amount of time, and to specifically say that, for this module, if you're using more than 2 hours, then there's something wrong.
Right.
You need to go back and find other avenues, and so maybe embed other avenues in my class for ways that people can ask questions or get answers, because that's the thing that I feel like I run up against all the time. Like, students will spend hours and hours on an assignment, and then they're so mad at me that the class is unreasonable. I'm like, it's unreasonable because you should have stopped and figured out what you were doing wrong 3 hours ago.
Yeah, right.
So that might be something that would be helpful, is if in courses that are already developed, that could be part of the development process, so maybe in new courses or whatever, that there is some sense of, like, based on the metrics that we have, because do you keep track of how long people are spending on a question?
Not per question, because that's,
or at least on a module.
I think we have some timing metrics, but I have to admit we're more about performance metrics than timing metrics, so we haven't spent a lot of time analyzing those.
Because I'm just thinking, like, even if you just had, even if it was fairly general and in aggregate, you could say, and you should be able to somehow relate it to, top scoring students spent on average about this much time, and struggling students spent this much time, so that gives us kind of a range. So then that way it helps an instructor too to say, oh, even the best students take an hour to do this.
That's really helpful, because I know for going forward and building courses going forward, I'm working to put some things in place where the faculty or the instructors or whoever builds these courses does kind of add some assumptions that they based it on, you know what I mean? So that for the next person who wants to use or build on that material further, there's some context for it, like what specific goals were they trying to accomplish with that course?
Yeah,
you
because
know,
I'll
why
tell you
they,
the truth.
yeah.
We
Go ahead.
oftentimes have no idea. Like, I don't always know how long it's going to take students. So
Right.
I ask them, I ask my strong students, how much time did you spend on this? I ask my weaker students, well, how much time did you spend on this to get to this point? And
Mhm.
that helps. But like, what I think should be a 10-minute problem, students spend a really long time on. And
Yeah.
they go to all kinds of resources. They'll pick up, like 5 different versions of the same textbook in order to figure out which one has this, tiny little change that they can manipulate. I don't know, it's crazy.
Right. You know, it might even be helpful. I'm just curious, and I'm not an
Probably,
instructor, but
yeah.
I wonder if you could, tell them, spend a half hour, work through this module, and then not knowing that you can watch the performance data on the back end and see how many people actually get it right the first time or have to like click
almost
around.
making things like a pretest almost. Like, go through this once, like set it up and have people go through it once, and then I'm going to assess, and guess what? I'm going to, provide a little bit of guidance, and then I'm going to reassign it, and you're going to go through it all over again. Now, is that something that can be done with this platform?
Well, they can work through any of the formative practice as much as they want without any.
They can always go back and redo.
Yeah, they can redo.
Yeah.
redo.
And you can design a pretest as well. That there are lots of courses that do that. They have like a baseline pretest to give students an idea of what to expect and what they already, get an expectation for what they already have grasped.
Mm-hmm.
And then the post test is essentially the same structure, just different questions.
Yeah, because what I'm thinking is that for some students, it might be good to make it like go through the entire thing. It's low stakes. If you miss things, like obviously do the best that you can, because then you know that you've gotten it right. But you're not gonna get assessed. Like, you don't have to call me or email me and be like, right? And then that way, then I can evaluate kind of where people are at, and then potentially roll the same exact content out again. Now, if you got it all right the first time, then you're golden.
Right.
If not, then you can go back and you have more, you kind of have a better understanding of, of what you were doing wrong the first time.
And to Andrea's question about activity being too much or too little, it's an interesting question. It's something we think about all the time. So when I'm giving advice on designing these courses, you generally want no less than 3 questions per learning objective.
Right.
Ideally, though, if you're thinking about valid and reliable data collection, and you're thinking about all the different and the repetition that students need to get that practice right, and the different contexts they need it, and the different scaffolding that you could build in. You could essentially see building anywhere from 7. I would love to see 20 questions per skill, but that's a lot to ask people to build into this. So the average is usually about 3 questions per skill, which ends up being 7 to 10 questions per learning objective. If you're breaking when you break the learning objective down into skills.
But if we go over, the platform can hold us.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. You could build as much as you want. I'd love to see a course that was built with.
No, there are no limits, and the more questions per skill, the better the prediction of
learning
of student learning state. Yeah.
And then I could even go further and say you want to make sure that you're building questions. So for each skill, you want at least 3 questions, and you want to make them slightly different contexts, different examples, maybe even different question types as well. The other thing that we try to get to, which is really hard to do and can probably only be done in an iterative way, is putting in your questions. Again, your course that you're building right out of the bat is your hypothesis of how you think these students are going to learn and what practice they need. And then you let the data from a couple runs of that course tell you, okay, students are still struggling with this concept. That's where you want to hone in and build more practice and offer more types of questions and more scaffolding, maybe even breaking down those questions further into smaller pieces so that they're practicing with each, and building up to that learning objective mastery. Again, that can be done over time and with the data and the iterative improvement method that we really espouse. Like, we really think that let the data tell you where to prioritize those improvements and provide those extra supports. Because a lot of experts, you know, they might think students really struggle with this piece, but then you're finding in the data it's slightly different than you thought, and that's where you want to hone in and build that practice.
Okay, so when you say like 3 questions per skill, are all 3 of those questions embedded into the
Good question. No.
application?
Oh, yes, they're all embedded in the application, but they don't all have to be formative practice. Those 3 questions per skill could be practice and high stakes assessment.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
You know,
So they're not all, as you're reading through the content, someone doesn't have to go through 7 different questions necessarily right then and there. They might
no.
do 2 questions there and then see another 2.
You might want to refresh later on, like, so you might understand that that skill is connected to this skill down the road. And so you might want to pull in a question there related to that back skill just to give them a refresher or to check that they still have that skill before moving on to something more in depth that builds on that. There's lots of different ways. It doesn't matter where the practice is embedded. As long as it's tagged to that skill, it's going to always give you data to that skill.
So one other question that I have is a lot of the skill building in the class that I'm thinking about for this is really in just understanding the problem, you know, they're word problems. So understanding the problem and understanding sort of what general, like how you approach the problem. So how do you guys normally embed those kinds of, that kind of critical thinking almost into this sort of a format, these activities?
So there are ways to develop even multiple choice questions to get at higher cognitive levels. It takes a little practice and you know, usually you can do it with what's the word I'm looking for? Scenario-based questions. You can get it at those higher cognitive levels. I missed your question now. I'm forgetting, like, I started to answer it and then.
I just, the problem that so many of my students have is they look at the problem and they don't even know where to start.
Yes.
So how do we ask questions that help them, you know, because I don't want them to feel like, okay, I can answer every single question that you offer me here, but if you give me a problem with no prompts, I can't go anywhere with it.
Well, so that's the beauty of the design process and really thinking through that design. So you want to give students practice at every skill level, but even those could probably be broken down further. So ideally you want, you know, you have a goal in mind. You have a goal. I want students to be able to solve this kind of problem, and it's that learning objectives and skills that you have to derive to, you know, figure out what exactly is the process that a novice student would go through to solve that problem, and then provide practice in each of those like sub skills, building up to the point where, okay, so you could have a page where you're building up to that big problem by giving them little questions that get at each piece of that problem. Mm-hmm. And then maybe the next page, you take a little bit of that scaffolding away and you give them a different starting point. And you give them less of the answer up front. And then you have another page where it's just the problem then. And you ask them to work through it without
so how
any
do you
scaffolding.
Assess the problem, like just write a wrong answer at that point?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
One of the ways. I think if what you're asking is how you get to all of that. How do you get to know all of that? It's from experience, like from your teaching experience. You usually know where they're gonna trip up. So that's where you want to design those sub skill kind of problems too. But if you have no idea, one of the methods that Ken Kadinger talks about is giving them open-ended questions. Even in if you're building your own, you know, Echo course, populate it with some open-ended questions to each skill or or objective, use the responses then to iterate.
Help. Yeah.
And
it seems like even just soliciting the questions from them is really, really helpful sometimes.
yeah.
You have
Actually,
somebody who's doing that with
students,
her. Yeah.
is that what you were just going to say? Yeah, asking students to write their own questions against those objectives is also, we found to be really helpful.
Yeah, and I do have students ask questions of the larger classroom, and then ask the other questions,
Nice.
the other students to answer those questions, and then I go through and, correct and encourage and stuff. So, but I think that doing that, but then aligning it more to the actual learning objectives, like clearly aligning it, I think that could potentially be really important. Like instead of just saying what questions you have about this topic, saying, okay, these are the 4 different key learning objectives here. What is a question that relates to that learning objective or that learning objective?
Right.
I think maybe that could be helpful.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is the big question that I want to ask you guys. Okay, so I'm pretty sure that I'm not the only person in the United States that is trying to do this kind of thing for this particular class. Dynamics in particular is, it's taught in a fairly similar way to a very large number of engineering students. So to what extent have you guys developed sort of a mechanism for collaboration? Because that's what I really want. Like what you're talking about is just too much for one person. And it makes me want to go run to Pearson or to Wiley or to some large company that has been paying a lot of people to develop a lot of questions in a similar kind of format. But I'd much rather use something like this. So do you have any mechanism for getting people connected together so that you could potentially have a team of maybe 3 or 4 faculty members in different places that are trying to work towards the same thing?
We think about that constantly. And in fact, my team is really trying to put in place more of this community building, more of the sharing of best practices, and how do you do this piece of content, and can you share what you're doing? And we are building that. We're trying to make it more formal, but really, if you're interested in connecting with others of your subject matter, we're happy to host something, to do something, to bring you together, to introduce you.
Yeah.
We also are starting to ramp up kind of like our own projects to build, like, for lack of a better word, a canon course, a baseline course that then anyone else could take and start to customize for their own. We're doing that with, we're probably going to end up doing it with Italian. We're probably going to end up doing that with physics. We're going to do that with, I believe, maybe a psychology overhaul as well. So we also bring teams of people together from various places to work together and facilitate that development process, to include everyone's perspective and kind of get a baseline course going. So if you're interested in that, and what's the subject? I missed. What's the subject matter?
So I teach mechanical engineering. So the class that I've kind of earmarked for this is dynamics. You guys have a statics class, so dynamics is pretty much the next class. They kind of are paired together. So that's why I thought it might be a good option. I mean, I teach a number of other classes as well, but they're all a little bit higher level. And I think that this class would be the one that would probably match most closely with kind of what you guys are trying to do.
That's great to know. So I'll have a conversation, as my boss is on vacation this week, but when I meet with him next week, I will certainly bring this up. And he kind of keeps a Rolodex of people in his head, that he knows are interested in different topics. And he might say, oh yeah, so-and-so's been wanting to do that for years and hasn't gotten it off the ground. So
I just feel like there's so much information that's already out here. There's so much work that's been done. There are probably a lot of campuses that have sort of started initiatives and gotten things put together. And this seems like the perfect platform for being able to potentially bring some of those things together.
The statics course was created by Paul Stife and Anna Dollar at, is it Miami of Ohio? I'm pretty confident it's Miami of Ohio. So it might be worth reaching out to them.
Now, what'd you say,
To
Paul?
Steif, S-T-E-I-F, I believe,
Uh-huh.
and a dollar, like dollar bill.
And by the way, instructors that build courses like this are almost, I mean, I've never seen any of them turn down an inquiry
Oh,
about the
they
material
love
or,
talking shop about this
yeah.
stuff.
Yeah, no, I
And so
know.
they
It's
probably have a good idea of where, if there are open materials that already exist on Dynamics,
Mhm.
where to find them, and then could advise you individually, of course, on how to start working on OLI materials. But one of the sort of visions that we've had recently about, let me back up a bit. Most of the OLI courses were built, they were grant funded. So,
Mhm.
you know, Hewlett Foundation, Gates, etc., come in with a bunch of money, and it funded a large effort across different large groups typically. And it was easy to view those as as project with known expected products, like a
Mhm.
psychology course, a
Mhm.
statistics course, etc. Where we are now, though, is that most of the content is not being created that way. It's being created by folks like yourself who are ready to contribute to an OER movement, but
Mhm.
can't build a full effective course, knowing that it takes a lot of work up front. The payoff is huge, but it's an enormous investment.
So
And
more organically, really.
right. So we've been working to, we don't have a formal process for this, but we have been working on bringing people together and encouraging them to do pieces. So what module would you say includes the biggest problem you want to solve with your students? Build that module.
Mhm.
8 pages, 10 pages, whatever. Use that every year. If that's all that ever gets built, then at least you have that. But what we'd like to see is for that to be part of a larger course where now another mechanical engineer comes in and builds a different module that would fit into the same overall full
Yeah.
semester course. And we, like I said, we don't have a process for this yet, but this is sort of like the vision, you know, where we bring together a bunch of people who are like-minded and who are willing to work on a course together, knowing that it's going to have a little bit of that cobbled together flavor because it's going to be developed by different
Right.
people with different approaches, but that essentially it will be a unified course in the end. And
So
then of
here's a
course there
here's a
may have to be
question
an
that I
editing.
have for you. So one of
Hmm.
the things that I've been doing, I don't always teach the class, but I have been basically supervising a recitation section, which is led by students in our upperclassmen.
Hmm.
And so we meet each week, and the students, I worked with the students, and we work together to develop these activities. So would something like those activities be an acceptable kind of component? So it's not really like a full
Yeah.
textbook chapter, but it would be like an activity
Yep.
that could be embedded into a full activity, a full chapter at some point. So it
Yes.
would basically be, because what I've been having them do is, you know, they write PowerPoint presentations or something like that, and basically step by step lead the students through. But what if we could roll it out in your platform? So then we
Hmm.
have all of the different pieces of information that I'm trying to get across to them, sort of in this text based with pictures, and then with the different questions at each step that they can then get immediate feedback. So then students could either be working on it in the recitation section, or they could
Hmm.
be working on it outside of that and then bringing their questions to it. But that might be a good starting place
It
because I
would be
already
a great
have
approach.
these activities set up.
Yeah.
Um, and then,
That's essentially what the virtual lab course is that we have. It's
yeah,
not that's not chemistry instruction. It's all just activities. And so, you know, you can it's a standalone product, and
okay, that
people.
might be a good place to start then. So then I can basically take some of these activities that I've been developing and refining over a couple of years and just begin to implement them through this more interactive platform rather than, because what we've been doing is just sending out a PDF, that takes them step by step through the process. And then after they come to the recitation and they work through it some, then we just give them the solutions afterwards, right? But this would be a way that they could get the solutions interactively as they actually punch in their answers. So
I can see Erin having trouble keeping it together. She wants you to do this. Yes. This is a good idea.
okay.
Yes.
All right.
please
Well,
do
that
it.
sounds
Please
good.
do it.
Then maybe we can talk a little bit more. I don't know if Erin is or Hal who I should be talking to, but
Can I jump in for a minute?
Of
Everybody?
course.
My name is Russell Burchell, as you see. I've worked extensively with OLI for a number of years. I was a project manager with Cyber Pathways in Maryland, which was a grant that came after and was subsequent to the National STEM Consortium. NSC, we built we flushed out an A+ course, but for all the coursework that was done with the NSC, we had everything go up to Skills Commons. So you should take a look, possibly, Heather, at Skills Commons for the mechatronics and different areas that were already designed. Now, they're not in the OLI platform yet. If you go to OLI and you look at PC hardware or PC software, you'll see how we designed that. And I kind of did double duty with being project manager and subject matter expert and all this stuff. And I've worked with these guys for a number of years. Norman, we did a lot of presentations locally.
So Russell, I'm on the website right now, the OLI website. Can I get to these from there?
Yes. If you have an account, you can go as open and free first.
Okay.
What?
Yeah, if you just type in NSC, you'll see all of them.
Yeah.
In the search field, it'll give you the catalog results of all of the NSC.
Okay, so NSC.
And I don't think there was much on the platform. I know for the NSC that was done as more of a this is what the platform can do for you.
Yeah. Okay.
But then we built the extensive, like I said, on the A+. The A+, obviously, that content doesn't help you. Skills Commons will have you search NSC there, National STEM Consortium, and you'll find a whole bunch of resources as well for content. The other resource I was going to put up to you as well is, if you're not already involved, is CCOER at Google's. It's a Google group. CCOER-advisory. I'll pop that in the chat. But anyway, I wanted to give you that information because for a resource perspective, that might help you. And then eventually you'll be able to figure out how to do the development piece. I'm here mostly because I'm taking some coursework and I'm going to modify what we already did. So I already have the platform that Hal and Aaron and all that team, they built it. All right. We have it built already. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to use Echo to edit and modify and update because, as you know, technology and just it moves so fast. And so we have things that we have to update and change. So I did put in chat the advisory on the Google groups. So that may also be a resource for you for open education resources.
Okay.
And, that's my 2 cents.
Yeah, thank you.
Russell, since you joined, I've been meaning to apologize to you directly for not being able to fix that course yet. I've been stuck in workshops like this all week.
It's not a problem at all, and I figured we'd hit each other today, and that's not a problem.
Yeah, good to see you.
It's good to be seen.
Yeah. Good.
So I'm having a bad internet connection, so I don't know if I'm being stuck or you're getting stuck, but I did want to I answered Andrea's question, but also wanted to make everyone kind of aware. We're integrating new tools and to be delivered through OLI all of the time. And in fact, the latest one we were able to integrate is a tool called Bazaar, which was built here at CMU. You can look it up. It's Carolyn Rose is the person who developed it. And it's a collaboration workspace with a discussion tool, and you can design a chat bot with it that will provide support to students and encourage them to, answer each other or answer the questions and do things like that. It's available However, it needs to be like designed for your specific material. So it's not something you can just like plug and play. It would have to, we'd work with you and Carolyn's group to customize it for your specific topic. But once you do, then it can be delivered through OLI and promote that collaboration and discussion.
Fabulous.
So we're always looking for takers on, you know, who wants to design a
Yeah.
bizarre tool, you know.
Excellent.
Yeah, so Heather, we don't really have a good answer for how to, for whether there's a process in place for bringing people together. The answer is no, but everybody recognizes that there's a need for this, and we're always looking at creative ways. So
Yeah.
we want to make it happen. We can't tell you that we've got something to pull out of the box right here.
Well, yeah. So I think from my perspective, what I'd like to do is, you know, just take this first step of connecting with you guys and saying, look, if, you know, as you go through things, if there are other people, I know that there are people out there. It's just a matter of figuring, and I know there are people probably on a lot of different, you know, connecting sites that are, I need to kind of figure that out. But the other piece is really this first baby step that I can take with essentially implementing these 12 activities that I have been doing through PowerPoint and implementing those through your system. So I think that that's, because then that provides something that we can show to other people and say, okay, now we want to take this to the next step, and include a lot more instruction and things like that into these as well. I guess, Erin, are you the person that I should talk to offline to kind of get set up with that?
Let me put my email in the chat.
Yeah, as part of our engagement with the SUNY system, we are able to provide a certain level of direct support to your project.
Okay, that would be great.
Definitely not going to speak for Erin here or make promises, but that there is, you know, at a high level, we can be part of this process and provide direct support.
Yeah. And so what I'll need to do is probably learn the system well enough to get a handle on how much work will be required to do this, and then decide, you know, whether it's something that I should just punch out myself, or it's something that I should try to figure out how I can get some students involved with it as well. You know, definitely I think it would be really helpful if I can get a couple of students involved, because then they can, you know, help just even just going through it and trying it out and saying, this does not make any sense, or this makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
So that way, I think it could potentially be really helpful for you too, just because we can get some real student feedback and things like that from it.
That would be fabulous.
Okay,
one of the places I would like to start is by receiving those PDFs, if you don't mind, so that while whatever other preparations you're making or you and Erin are making, I can hand those off to the engineers to see if they have an idea for how to ingest that stuff, so that you don't have to, you know, copy and paste.
Okay. Yeah, and I should probably try to pull everything together, because, you know, this semester when we went remote, I just kind of handed it off to my students and said, you do whatever works best for you. They came up with a bunch of different PowerPoints. I mean, they have a lot of really more creative visualization tools than I had, because I relied a lot more on hands-on stuff because we were, you know, in the room with people. So I'll see what I can pull together, and I will try to get some of that stuff to you guys then. Okay, so Erin, I'll just contact you via email to get things started, and then we can just kind of go from there. Thank you so much, guys.
Guys, thank you.
Yeah, you're very welcome. And Padma, I will follow up with you about using chemistry. Just to let you know that we're not going to let you, we don't want you dropping off the radar here.
Right. Yeah, I'd appreciate that.
Yeah,
And I have one question. Are all the contents accessible? What you have there in the current course, the general chemistry courses?
The best answer there is we do our best, and we are, the platform itself is accessible, but the design of the actual utilization of the accessibility affordances is, you know, something that we have to rely on the authors for. So what we recommend is that you recognize that yes, it is accessible, but is likely to have flaws, and that we need to know about them as soon as they're encountered so that we can rectify them. But by and large, the system is designed so that every image has the ability for you to add alt text, and videos have transcripts, etc. So the theme is designed so that a screen reader can read it. But there are places where it is not accessible. For instance, the labs do require manipulation of a mouse or a trackpad. I don't think that they are. I'm not entirely sure, but I don't think that they are keyboard manipulable entirely. So there are places where it's imperfect, but we are doing our best and trying to remediate each of the instances when they are raised. It's a big platform with 20 years behind it, so there's a lot of stuff to retrofit.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
So how do we get the access to the Echo account to do this?
So I will set you up. Here, I'm putting it in the chat. This is the URL, echo.oli.cmu.edu. You can go there and create your own account. You don't need to be approved or anything. You just have to use a real email address that gets verified. And then once you have your account, I can add you to your own chemistry project, which would be a clone of the source material, and you'll be free to edit it to your heart's desire, to your heart's delight.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. So let me know once you've created that account, and I'll do that for you. Same for you, Russell. Your material, I didn't realize was actually a I'm not well versed enough in it to have recognized immediately that it was actually a combination of two different STEM courses. So I need to cobble that together for you in the XML. It would be really helpful if you could identify which pieces need to be added from where.
Okay,
what am I missing?
I sent you an email. There's a syllabus attached.
Okay. When I look at it, I don't know which one is from foundations and which one is from readiness. That's all. I'll figure it out though.
It's only one module, maybe. If you want, I can try to shoot you another one with it marked, because I probably know it quicker and faster if I look at it.
Okay. All right. Yeah, that would be helpful. Thanks.
I don't think I marked it, so I can do that for you. I appreciate it. Thanks.
Yeah, of course. Thank you too. So we're about 45 minutes over, so I think we're gonna wrap it up unless we have any more pressing questions.
A quick question I have: how do we integrate it with our LMS? I have emailed a few times to our online team, but I haven't heard any response from them.
What campus are you at?
Pasadena City College.
Okay, 1 second. Let me see if Pasadena already has an integration, because it's possible that you do. Sorry, it's just a few clicks. I don't have it bookmarked.
Sorry if I'm missing any questions. My internet's really spotty at the moment.
Method. Okay, so it appears as though Pasadena City is not set up yet. So when I follow up with you, Padma, I will share the knowledge base article that you'll need to share with your Canvas administrator, who can then, your Canvas administrator has to just go through a few steps to add OLI. It's really simple. It takes like an hour, total back and forth. And then OLI will have been added to Canvas as, I don't know what the terminology in Canvas is, but we would be an external tool provider. And then you will be able to add a link to OLI, to your OLI chemistry course in your Canvas shell. And that'll be the place where students access it. You know, they'll click on it and it'll just be single sign-on.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Sure. But we'll help you through it if there's any question about the article. If you need any clarification, we can walk you through it. It's not a problem.
Okay. So you will send me that article?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure. All right.
Yeah, that would make me feel more.
All right, folks. Thank you for joining. We have several different forms of follow-ups, so please expect those in the coming days. And this was recorded. It's going to be really long, but I will share it out. I'll upload it to YouTube and share it out. Okay. All right, folks. Thanks again.
Thanks,
you.
Ken.
You.
Really appreciate it.
Thanks, everyone.
Appreciate
See you
it.
soon.
Good. Yeah.
Okay.
Bye.